sessions, and they are just attempting or have attempted to do things differently. And that in and of itself, I think, is probably worth attending. So if you would like to, and we're going to be doing this hopefully with a whole number of different performances that are going to be down there at the Thunder Ridge Nature Arena. So Slightly Stupid and Dirty Heads will be performing August 31st, and you can go to ksgf.com and get yourself registered to win there. They also are going to be joined by special guest Hyrie and the Expendables. I'm not sure who that is. I guess that's how it's pronounced, Hirie. But you've heard Dirty Heads. That's
Yes.
You're familiar.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right, there you go. That's ksgf.com. The defendant's laptop is real, writes Jonathan Turley. With those words and pictures like this one of Biden using crack, and the picture is posted on the article, the Justice Department introduced the Hunter Biden laptop as evidence in his upcoming trial over federal gun violations. The federal prosecutors went on to denounce suggestions of Russian disinformation long peddled by the Bidens, the media, and former intelligence officials as nothing more than a conspiracy theory. Wasn't this an interesting turn of events? The media eagerly spread the claim of Russian disinformation before the presidential election. Twitter and others suppressed the story. This was done through one of the most skillful disinformation campaigns in history, at least that we're aware of. It later came out that associates of the Biden campaign, including now Secretary of State Antony Blinken, pushed a long effort to get former intelligence officials to sign a letter making the claim, knowing that an ever-accommodating media would accept the claim without question or further inquiry. And of course they did, much like they accept Hamas talking points. At the time, Hurley writes, some of us wrote that the laptop was self-authenticating since many of the emails were confirmed by third parties and other evidence. The Justice Department last week made the same claim of self-authentication as well as independent confirmation by federal investigators. In the now debunked letter of former intelligence officials just before the election, figures such as Leon Panetta, former CIA director in the Obama administration, claim that the letter had all of the markings of a Russian disinformation effort by intelligence services. Panetta continued to make the assertion late last year in pushing what the federal government is now calling a conspiracy theory. So all of these people who support censorship in the Democrat Party in order to prevent Americans from being misled by disinformation campaigns and conspiracy theories were the ones who were behind spreading the disinformation campaign and conspiracy theories. The Washington Post Phillips Bump and others continued to push the conspiracy theory. Indeed, in 2021, when media organizations were finally admitting that the laptop was authentic, Bump was still declaring that it was a conspiracy theory. Despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary, Bump continued to suggest that, quote, the laptop was seeded by Russian intelligence. What is equally astonishing is that in 2023, the Post expressly stood by Bump's reporting on the laptop and other debunked claims, even after the government had declared this reporting as part of a conspiracy theory. The Post continues to support the reporting by Bump and others. The laptop includes not just pictures of Hunter using drugs, but brandishing a handgun. The court clearly agrees with the government on the authenticity of the laptop. It has ruled against the defense and will allow it to be introduced into evidence. Despite the conclusions of American intelligence and others, the Biden team continued to push the disinformation that led the Justice Department to tell the court that, quote, the defendant's theory about the laptop is a conspiracy theory with no supporting evidence. It added that Hunter's laptop is real, it will be introduced as a trial exhibit, and it contains significant evidence of the defendant's guilt. The response from the media has been a collective shrug. Worse yet, Many of these same political and media figures continue to support censorship and government regulations of disinformation, while the government is now acknowledging that they carried off one of the most successful disinformation campaigns in history. And again, I note that we know of. If we had a culture of quality and ethical journalism in this country, there would be some major cleaning of house. The fact that this was allowed without being questioned whatsoever tells us that media in the form that it should exist, and that is being the watchful eye of people in power on behalf of us. But instead, it does the opposite. And it acts as a propaganda outlet for the elites. No shame, no embarrassment, because they did what they were supposed to do. And the fact that, I mean, this should be, and it is for most intelligent people, evidence as to why we do not allow censorship in this country. You think about it just in terms of humanity and history. When you look back on any disinformation campaigns that have ever been put out there, effective or otherwise, has it ever been citizens? It's always government, isn't it? It is always it's the government of the very people that government is supposed to be representing. There's an amazing consistency there when it comes to efforts to censor, when it comes to efforts to silence, and when it comes to efforts of suppression. It is always the government of the very people that it tells us it's protecting. And the fact that, and this is the insanity of it, the same government, because these are all the same people that go from one administration to another. And it may not be the exact same people, but the fact that you can have this government that was out there utilizing its authority and its influence in order to suppress, very successfully so, suppress the Hunter laptop story. And to go further and accuse any Americans, including a presidential candidate at the time, Donald Trump, of assisting Putin in trying to interfere in our election by spreading the conspiracy theory that the laptop was real. This is the same government that is now using that laptop in a court case. And calling the folks and the argument that the laptop was a conspiracy theory, the government is now noting that that is the true conspiracy theory. Censorship coming from the government never benefits the people. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. All right, that first alert forecast sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. From Color 10 Fox 49, meteorologist Tom Schmidt. Partly cloudy, a high near 80. Today, 58. Overnight low. Tonight, tomorrow, mostly sunny, 79. Thursday, mostly sunny with a high near 78. Last week, we announced the second Great Escape of 2024. And, of course, just immediately began filling up. One of the reasons that we note that there is limited space. You may think, well, those resorts are huge. They're massive oftentimes. How can there be limited space? Well, I mean, they are a popular destination for not just the U.S., but people from Europe. But it's the flight that is more restricting. There's only so many seats on the flight, and we all take a chartered flight together. And it's for that reason that the greatest amount of limitation is on the number of people that get to join us. We are going to be in Costa Mujeres. This is going to be I believe we leave the Sunday after the presidential election. And so it is going to be a great time to get away, regardless of the results. Who knows? Maybe we won't know them, because as we somehow progress, you would think that we would get better at this. In some states, Florida is a great example of it. Missouri's not too bad off. But amazingly enough, the states that are blue states, they tend to have a very difficult time counting votes. Sometimes it takes weeks and weeks and weeks for them to find them all in trunks of cars and basements. They have a tendency to misplace votes quite often. And depending how this election goes, particularly some of these states that are supposed to be absolute no-brainer Joe Biden, in which Trump is finding that he is competitive, it could be weeks before some of those counts are actually done, though if the 270 mark of electoral votes needed is met or surpassed, then it would not matter as much. But point being is, it'll be nice for us all to be together in Costa Mujeres. It's the Riu Palace in Costa Mujeres, and Junior Suite Garden View is $18.85 per person. Junior Suite Swim Up, $21.15 per person. That includes all you can eat, all you can drink, everything. That's the flight, that is taxes, that is transfer fees. That's absolutely everything in there that you need. It is an incredible deal, and you don't have to worry about any of the planning stuff. That's all taken care of. We get there, we go together. Once we're there, if you want to go off on your own, you're more than welcome to, or you're also more than welcome just to hang out with us. We do the show there 3 days, and if you want to be part of the show, you can, whether that's just sit and observe or be on the show. And I think we had the greatest participation of listeners on the show when we were in Punta Cana.
I think so.
Yeah.
But I did also bully quite a few of them to come on.
Mm-hmm, yeah. That's what she
Do
does.
it again?
Yeah. That's what she does. She's ferocious in that way. But this is twice in 1 year. We've done it twice in a year, one other time. And it seemed to work. And, if it continues to work, then we'll just do twice a year for the foreseeable future, I suppose. So I suspect that this will sell out. It's it's in the pattern, if you will, where we first announce and then it gets booked up real quickly, and then there's a consistent sign up after that for a period of time until we do sign out. If you need any further details, you can go to ksgf.com, and on the rotating tile on the front page, the 2024 Great Escape, there's information regarding travel insurance, reservations, other things as well, and that includes the phone number in order to get a hold of Cam, and her email address as well, in case you have any further questions and you want to go ahead and get yourself in queue. I believe July 1st is the deadline to have payment. It's $500 per person in order to get your slot reserved on the plane and your junior suite. And after that, it's easy sailing, or flying and getting there. KSGF.com for all the details. Now, we mentioned that the government, our government, that once upon a time told us that Hunter Biden's laptop was not real and that it was a conspiracy theory, are now in court. Federal prosecutors are saying that's not the conspiracy theory. The conspiracy theories are the conspiracy theories. So in other words, they're fully acknowledging, yeah, the laptop's real. And anyone who says otherwise, now you're the conspiracy theorist. So how do you like them apples? At the same time, There are reports, this one from Just the News, that President Biden visited the home of his daughter-in-law, Haley Biden, Sunday night, just weeks before she is set to testify against first son Hunter Biden in his federal trial for alleged gun crimes. All right, now follow this here. Haley is the widow of Beau Biden and the ex-girlfriend of Hunter, so she kind of got passed around amongst brothers there. The visit by Joe Biden Sunday evening was at Haley's home in Delaware, according to Axios reporter Alex Thompson and the New York Post. The White House did not give an explanation for the president's visit, which took place around 8 p.m., according to the Post. Hunter Biden facing 2 trials this year on gun and tax evasion charges. Haley was in a relationship with Hunter during the time of his alleged gun crimes and is expected to testify against him along with his ex-wife Kathleen Buell, according to National Review. Prosecutors alleging that Hunter lied about his use of drugs when he applied to purchase a gun and that gun was later illegally disposed of. Haley Biden reportedly got rid of it in 2018. I mean, is it not just Jerry Springer? I'm telling you.
It's like a reality show.
It's hard to keep up with these Bidens, and they like to pass those women around. Share them. I guess he was just comforting her in her time of need. And who better? Because clearly is a very stable individual, and in the instability of losing your husband to cancer and constantly having to remind your father-in-law that it wasn't in war, you need the stability of a crack-smoking brother-in-law like Hunter Biden. And so Joe Biden making a visit. Now, we know what would happen. Can you imagine? If roles were reversed and Donald Trump made a visit. Why is it that there is a gag order on Donald Trump as we speak when it comes to some of these trials? Because even just talking to the television, we're told that could be tampering with a witness. So Donald Trump is told you do not have the right to free speech. And this is all for the purposes of making sure that none of the witnesses or none of the jurors feel intimidated. Meanwhile, you have Joe Biden visiting the home of one of the witnesses against his son, regarding a crime that no one seems to really be denying. I again, am going to be very interested to see what their defense is. If they're going to try to parse, well, what did it mean to be on drugs at the time? And I'm wondering if, and this would not surprise me, if they will claim that he was not in his right mind because of the drugs, and because he was on the drugs, he cannot be held accountable for filling out that form incorrectly because he was on drugs. So when you ask him, were you on or are you on drugs at the time of his attempt to make a gun purchase, and he said yes, he can't be blamed for that because he was on drugs. Or if he said no, rather, which is what he did, and that's the federal crime lying on the federal form, that he couldn't help it. He was on drugs. What do you expect? You're asking a drug addict who had such poor judgment that he was posting pictures of himself smoking crack on the internet, that he had such poor judgment that he forgot his crack pipe in a rental car? This is a guy that had such poor judgment. All of this information we now know, amongst other tidbits of information, because he took his laptop to get repaired and forgot it there. Someone that has displayed such poor judgment cannot be expected to be held responsible for marking the no box on are you currently addicted to drugs. In fact, they may argue he doesn't even remember filling out the form. And how can you find someone guilty for something that if he wasn't in that right state of mind? Now, when it comes to Joe Biden visiting a witness against Hunter Biden, hey, it's all in the family, right? He's a family man. I would just note, once again, the difference in a judicial system that takes away the ability of Donald Trump, while all these other witnesses against him, one Cohen, I guess the one witness that was supposed to be against him, although it's spectacularly backfired, was going on actually raising money while trashing on Donald Trump. Donald Trump is told that he cannot even speak because that might be tampering with a witness. Meanwhile, Joe Biden is going to the home of one of the witnesses against his son. And I'm sure if anyone raises this as possibly concerning, you'll be called a conspiracy theorist. You'll be, oh, it's just trying to comfort her. Meanwhile, the Biden campaign there's a memo in the Washington Examiner laying out what is going to be the debate attack plan against Trump. And this is really rich. That next, the Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line 447 KSGF. I'm Nick Reed. Biden campaign memo lays out debate attack plan against Trump, Washington Examiner. Biden is set to, quote, hold Donald Trump accountable on the debate stage, according to campaign chairwoman Jen O'Malley Dillons. In the month leading up to that first debate, the Biden-Harris campaign will zero in on Trump's dangerous campaign promises and unhinged rhetoric. You know, like calling Americans that don't support him semi-fascist, claiming that the election of Joe Biden will be the end of democracy as we know it. Those sorts of unhinged claims, because those are actually the claims coming from the Democrats. The end of democracy as we know it. There have been claims made on MSNBC that if Donald Trump gets elected president, that he will assassinate generals that don't support him. You have Democrats out there claiming that if he gets elected president, he is going to be a dictator. They refer to him as Hitler and claim that he just will never ever leave the White House, that he will just become a dictator. But those are the people that we're told are going to focus in and make sure we remember all of the unhinged rhetoric of Donald Trump. The campaign is singling out 3 lines of attack against Trump, from his efforts that led to the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade, to his false allegations that the 2020 election was stolen, and his support for economic policies that allegedly benefit the billionaire class at the expense of the middle class. The problem that the Democrats are having with this abortion situation is to some degree of their own making, because they made it sound as if, and I think a lot of younger Democrat voters believe this, that because of the Dobbs decision, there were going to be women dying in the streets and in back alleyways because they could not get abortions, that this was this huge assault on the, quote, rights of women. Yet what has actually occurred, unfortunately, is that there have been more abortions post that decision than there were before, on average. And so you had a lot of these young, and not just young, but they're particularly vulnerable because they haven't really figured out the game yet, that you just get lied to by the political party, the Democrat Party, and all these things that they say are going to happen don't happen, like the end of democracy as we know it, and climate change is going to kill us all in 10 years, and all of these scare tactics that they use. Younger people don't know that this just is what they do. And so they genuinely believed that this was going to be the end of women's rights, and that they themselves, if not them, then friends, family members, who needed to get an abortion in order to save her own life, instead were left dying in hospital emergency room lobbies because of this new law. And they're finding out none of that's happening. They're finding out that if they want an abortion, they're going to be able to get one. Oh, yes, they may have to drive a few hours. But ultimately, it isn't unfolding in this horrific fashion that they had instilled in their minds. Now, this other attack line regarding the economy, I get they're just going to double down on this and try to convince Americans that you have it better than you've ever had it before. That economically speaking, it doesn't get any better than this. It's wonderful, and it's all in your imagination. The high gas prices, the high food prices, the high rent prices, the high energy prices, the high car payment prices, the high insurance price, all across the board, that all of that is really the sign of how great you have it. That hasn't worked yet. And generally, when somebody is a victim, they tend to not like to be told, no, you're not. When somebody is saying, I'm hurting economically, or, this is the situation that I'm in, the people who cause that problem then telling them, no, you're not, you're fine, you don't know what you're talking about, generally does not work. And this is part of the big problem that they're having with this campaign, and continuing to see that in these swing states, Donald Trump is beating Joe Biden when it comes to these issues. And apparently the plan is we're just going to double down and continue to carry out this plan of attack that has not been working for us. Springfield's Talk 1041, I'm Nick Reed. Free breakfast for veterans this Friday at Scramblers. Love for you to join us. That's all you need to know about that. News in 60 seconds. I'm Nick Reed. You got this week to take advantage of the half-off air conditioner inspection from A1 Custom Car Care. If it's running a little bit cool, but not quite cold, you may be thinking, well, I'll just go and buy one of those cans of stuff, and if that doesn't work, then I'll take it in. Once that stuff goes in, it cannot come out, which means you can irreversibly harm your air conditioning unit and then require a whole overhaul, a whole brand new unit necessary in order to get it working properly. So you probably don't want to go that route. It's one of those situations where, ironically, trying to save yourself money, you can actually cost yourself a lot more money potentially. But they can explain all that at A1 Custom Car Care. And for this month, the month of May, there is half price off that air conditioner inspection. And I'm not talking about they fire it up and put their hand in front of the vent and like, yeah, it feels cold. They get in there and they see what's going on, and they see if it's running at 100% or 90% or 20%. That way you can get it fixed properly. A1 Custom Car Care. This Washington Examiner story about the Biden campaign and what they're previewing the attack on Donald Trump. And, of course, they're going to hit on the abortion thing, which, as I noted, there's a lot of enthusiasm lost amongst the pro-abortion faction of our society, because what they're finding out is that all of these horrific end-of-world scenarios that the Democrats and the media were talking about regarding abortion have not happened, right? I mean, they're telling of the post-Roe v. Wade world because of Donald Trump. You would have 12-year-old pregnant girls that are forced to have babies and then they die while birthing their child. And this was going to be a commonplace scenario and something that was just going to be occurring with a great frequency. And that if you get pregnant and you want to kill your own child, you're going to be forced to deliver your child and actually have your child. And what they're finding out is that fear it's not happening. These things are not actually occurring. And it doesn't mean that the issue of abortion, people who want to have that sort of authority over another human life, the belief that they should be able to control that life up to and including the killing of that life, they're very, very passionate about it. I mean, it's the same philosophy that people held who were pro-slavery in this country. We fought a war over it. And that is a very, very difficult mindset to change within people. So it's still going to be important, but that feverishly frightened world that they told was going to unfold just hasn't happened. They also are going to hit on the economy. But this is perhaps my favorite line from O'Malley Dillon, who is this is chairwoman of the campaign. Quote, "We will make sure that the voters who will decide this election are reminded of the chaos and harm Trump caused as president and why they booted him out 4 years ago." Now, this also is a pretty interesting approach because it largely was the campaign theme 4 years ago, that the world is chaotic under Donald Trump and the adults are going to be back in charge. That all of the chaos because of COVID and all of the nastiness in politics and all of those divisions that occurred, all of that is going to go away. And so if you're tired of that stuff as an American, Joe Biden was just going to make everything go back to where the world was peaceful, the United States was respected, we had no turmoil, whether it be at home or abroad. And that, of course, has not happened. Whether it's chaos on our own border, the chaos of pulling out of Afghanistan, the chaos of Putin resuming his invasion of Ukraine, which halted under President Trump, the chaos of a North Korea once again developing its nuclear ambitions, the chaos of a nuclear Iran, the chaos of October 7th, and the fact that we're funding that. I mean, it's still just this upside-down world where we are assisting the Iranians. We are making it possible for the Iranians to continue to fund terrorism. We helped make October 7th a possibility under this president. Then you have the chaos of drugs, the chaos of violence in the streets, not to mention the economic chaos. And this administration is going to try and convince Americans that this is the peace and stability. That Donald Trump is the one, with the Abraham Accords and the most secure border many of us had seen in our lifetime. All of that chaos, you see, is what this administration is going to attempt, and this campaign is going to attempt to remind us all about, and juxtapose that next to the peace and tranquility of the Biden administration. That approach hasn't worked, and when it doesn't work again, should they go forward with it, they will once again demonstrate in the media that they live in their own little bubble. And they will find themselves once again confused as to why it isn't working. Don't people remember? How is it that people in America could so quickly forget the total chaos under the Trump administration? And then the same networks like MSNBC that made sure that someone who could provide insight did not get hired, or actually got hired, but then ended up getting fired, former RNC spokesperson Ronna McDaniel, or head of the RNC. As you recall, she was hired by MSNBC to be a voice to explain what it is that Trump voters are thinking, to be someone to offer that observation up to say, hey, here's why it is that these voters in this country aren't on board with Biden. But they all said they refused to work with her, and they stomped their feet until she was fired. And then they will sit around and act confused and say, and they've actually said these words. Can somebody explain to me what these voters are thinking? Yes, someone possibly could have, but you had her fired. The Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line 447 KSGF. The latest news update. The First Alert forecast, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals, from Color 10 Fox 49, meteorologist Tom Schmidt. Partly cloudy today, a high near 80, 58 tonight, sunny 79 tomorrow. Thursday, mostly sunny, high near 78. 2024 Great Escape 2. Coming up in November after the election. The details at KSGF.com. Costa Mujeres. Make your reservations now. It's north of Cancun. I believe that's correct. By about 45 minutes to an hour. It is an incredibly beautiful resort with beautiful beaches. And we have the details, including how you can reserve your slot now at KSGF.com. There is a report in Politico that Biden plans on making a White House backdrop address regarding whatever happens with the Trump trial. Planning to make the public statement when a verdict is reached in the business records trial of former President Donald Trump, which could be as early as this week, according to the report. I saw a poll, incidentally. CBS had it earlier. 93% of Democrats think that Trump is guilty. Now, what would have been fantastic as a follow-up question is guilty of what? Paying hush money. That's not illegal, and that's not what he's on trial for. It would be interesting to know what percentage of Democrats who feel that Trump is guilty have any clue what he's even being charged with. Even legal experts on networks like CNN are still grappling with trying to figure that one out. On MSNBC, these left-wing outlets, when they have these attorneys that come on and they have to try to explain what's going on, generally speaking, they do not really have a lock on it because the underlying crime, if you will, is something that really hasn't been described or explained. Jonathan Turley actually has a pretty good piece on this. We'll get it posted. It tries to, if we have time in the show, I'll read it because Jonathan Turley, of course, he's not a Trump supporter. He's a Democrat, but he's a constitutional attorney that he continues to stick by his ethical approach when it comes to lawfare. And even though Donald Trump is not someone that he would like to see as president of the United States, he recognizes what's going on. And he has a piece that essentially compares this trial to a Pollock painting, which is chaos and no real clear focus of exactly what is going on. And this is what we've been left with. So when you see 93% of Democrats, and by the way, you see why it is in New York that they are holding this trial, where you have about 93% of the population there being Democrats, when they say, oh, yes, he's guilty, a great follow-up open-ended question would be guilty of what? The president plans to make the statement in a, quote, White House setting and not a campaign one to show that his statement isn't political, for sources anonymously told Politico. Now, this is an interesting perspective. Either way, people increasingly see this for what it is, and that is political persecution. A majority of Americans consistently polled say that the only reason that Biden and the Democrats are going after Donald Trump is for political purposes. And it doesn't matter whether you do it on the campaign trail or in the White House. If anything, you want to talk about projecting an image more like a third world country or a Putin-style totalitarian regime, and that is from the White House, address this. This seems like a poor calculation. Now, doing it in a campaign setting, yes, that would open them up to see this is about the campaign. But doing it from the White House, it certainly isn't going to diminish that. It isn't going to make the average American who recognizes this as a Putin-style approach to silencing your political opposition go, oh, well, he's doing it from the White House, so I guess this isn't political. This is a distinction that does not exist. And if anything, it could do the opposite and make it even more apparent that here you have the President of the United States from the People's White House using his position as president, not as a presidential candidate, but as president with the backdrop of the White House in some particular setting, commenting on his political party trying to imprison his main political opposition. Apparently, the plan here is, if he is convicted, to begin the marketing of Donald Trump as convicted felon. I suspect that this will reap the same sort of benefit they're looking for, that they were looking for, with a Trump mugshot. This is not going to help them. And I don't care what the polls say. People being asked, and the Politico piece cites, and there's a Breitbart piece also that cites that 6% of people who currently say that they will vote for Trump will be less likely to vote for him if he is convicted. I suspect that not that 6%, I think it'll dissolve. Given what it is that we're facing in this country, it just doesn't make sense that a person would allow a jury of Trump supporters decide for them whom they're going to support in the presidency. Because that's what this would be. Not to mention the fact that we have seen the polls move more favorable towards Trump amongst some in our population because they feel he is being politically targeted and they don't like it. So you could conceivably, once again, not only not hurt Trump politically speaking, but help him. It's as if they keep thinking, maybe the next step will work. Maybe the next step will work. Maybe the next step will work. Raiding his home did not work. Getting the mugshot did not work. Having him indicted did not work. Holding a trial has not worked. Maybe finding him guilty. Maybe that will do it. But if the American people hold consistent with where they have been on this issue, the Democrats are going to once again find themselves very confused. The Biden team, according to the reports, acknowledged that they don't think it will make a meaningful change in the trajectory of the campaign, a view that's backed by polls that show Americans are not following the trial closely, and that it would not significantly change support for Trump. Biden's team preparing options for the conviction or an acquittal or a hung jury. If Trump is convicted, they will argue it shows that Trump is ill-suited for office, quote, with discussions underway about referring to the ex-president online as convicted felon Donald Trump. According to the report, if he's acquitted, or in the case of a hung jury, Biden is preparing for a barrage of Republican and Trump attacks. Closing arguments up for today. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. President Trump now leads Joe Biden in a poly-market poll, up 21 points in 1 month. It's a betting site where you can bet all sorts of things that go on throughout the world. And there has been a massive shift in the betting world as to whom it is that is going to be the next president of the United States. And the bets are now on Donald Trump, 56 to 37%. President Trump taking a commanding lead against Joe Biden in the latest poly-market poll, the 21-point shift to Trump in just 1 month. The poly-market poll currently has Trump's likelihood of winning in 2024 at 56%, Joe Biden at 37%, Michelle Obama at 3%, RFK Jr. at 2%, and Kamala Harris at 1%. And this is consistent with other polls that have been taken, and that is an increasing lead that Donald Trump is taking over Biden. This is one of those money where your mouth is situations, though, and though it's just a poll based on, the likelihood that is felt genuinely. These, when you're talking about betting your money, it's different than when some person calls you up from CNN or The Hill or PBS or whatever outfit is doing a poll at any given time, because you don't really have anything to lose necessarily. And so they see the betting markets as a real, true, authentic belief as to which direction things are going. And looking at where people are putting their money, the momentum is on the side of Donald Trump. There is a story in Breitbart. Silicon Valley investors are backing Trump, quote, impossible to support Biden. Now, this is a segment of the population that is liberal, and they have long sided with liberals. And many of these backers, they're former backers of Joe Biden, and they are going on the record as saying, it was a goof. Donald Trump is getting my support this time around. That story plus more coming up. I'm Nick Reed. I want a great homeloan.com for all of your home loan needs. The residual benefits to my family's finances have been tremendous because of learning how to manipulate my credit. And when I went through the process years ago, my credit situation was a good one, but I didn't pay much attention to it at the same time because I thought, well, what can you do? You hear these stories about if you take a hit to your credit, 7 years before you can fix it. And I learned that that's not the case always. And that, in fact, with just a few particular areas of, maybe pay this here, take care of that over there, or how even to check your full credit report, that you can very quickly make a big difference when it comes to your credit report. And it doesn't have to be this scary thing that you think there's nothing that you can do in order to improve it. And that's just one of the many benefits from working with the Carrickers at iwantagreathomeloan.com. So not only can you get a great home loan, but you can get a great grasp of your credit and how it is to utilize it to your benefit. iwantagreathomeloan.com, because you do. First Alert Forecast, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements, from Color 10 Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt. Partly cloudy, high near 80 today. Clouds 58 for a low tonight. Sunny 79 tomorrow. Thursday mostly sunny with a high near 78. Major Silicon Valley investors are backing former President Donald Trump after expressing disgust for Biden's anti-growth policy proposals, though this should not have come as any surprise. It constantly amazes me when these people who seemingly, they put their money, their efforts, and their credibility on the line to support someone, and then they act surprised when that someone is who that someone is. Who in their right mind believed for any moment that Joe Biden was going to have pro-growth policies? Keith Rayboy, an early leader at PayPal who played key roles at LinkedIn, Square, and Slide, said, quote, "It's impossible to support Biden." Rayboy did clarify that while he's not a fan of Trump, he would be working to elect a Republican House and Senate. Other prominent big tech moguls, including David Sachs, Cometh, I don't know how to pronounce that last name, Mark Andreessen, and Sean McGuire, have tired of Biden's proposals, including a 25% billionaire tax and antitrust crackdowns enacted by the Democrat majority at the Federal Trade Commission. Other tech executives also opposed oppressive regulations imposed by SEC Chairman Gary Gensler. Andreessen, the founder of large venture capitalist firm Andreessen Horowitz, said that there are real issues with the Biden administration, saying that a second Trump administration would be staffed by, quote, very different kinds of people at the SEC and FTC. Ben Horowitz, the other founder of Andreessen Horowitz, said that his company would back any lawmaker who believed in an optimistic technology-enabled future. Sachs, the former chief operating officer of PayPal, plans to host a fundraiser for Trump and will interview the 45th president on his podcast. Sachs said last week at a tech conference, "I have bigger disagreements with Biden than with Trump." Quote, "It's a good reason for Silicon Valley to think really hard about who it wants to vote for," Sachs said, citing Biden's onerous tax proposal, which would attack startup founders who want to offer stock options to employees. Sachs attended a recent anti-Biden dinner with X, formerly Twitter owner Elon Musk, and Peter Thiel. The founder of venture capital firm Social Capital plans to co-host a fundraiser along with Sachs. Quote, 4 years ago, you had to issue an apology if you voted for him, said one investor at Thiel's Founders Fund, who wrote, and then that's what the founder wrote, but the tide's turning. And you have more of these people, and it is very interesting, who at one point in time acknowledging that if you voted for Trump, you had to apologize for it in Silicon Valley. You had to keep it hidden, but these people are now coming out very publicly because they are recognizing the tremendous amount of damage that this administration is going to continue to do if they have another 4 years in office. Meanwhile, you have Secretary of State, or Transportation, rather, Pete Buttigieg was on Face the Nation. And I mean, this is just fantastic. So I don't know what this guy does. Electric vehicles, of course, is this fantasy of the left. And other than just the ability to control what people are and are not allowed to buy, there are no other reasons given as to why it is that they support electric vehicles. They are not good for the environment. They're certainly not better for the environment. They are not consumer friendly in the same way that gasoline vehicles are. They don't cost less than standard vehicles. They do not make us less reliant on foreign adversaries. If anything, they do make us even more reliant on countries like China, who control the land in which the different materials are needed in order to develop batteries and other components of these vehicles. So, I mean, there is no component to the electric vehicle that is beneficial environmentally, when it comes to sovereignty, when it comes to convenience, when it comes to cost, yet they just continue to push it. One of the arguments that the administration made in terms of leading the advancement of technology was allocating $7.5 billion for electric vehicle stations. This is part of the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022. $7.5 billion. This is the exchange with Pete Buttigieg regarding that money on Meet the Press.
Taxpayers made back in 2021. Why isn't that happening more quickly?
The president's goal is to have 500,000 chargers up by the end of this decade. Now, in order to do a charger, it's more than just plunking a small device into the ground. There's utility work, and this is also really a new category of federal investment. But we've been working with each of the 50 states. Every one of them is getting formula dollars to do this work, engaging them in the first handful. Again, by 2030, 500,000 chargers. And the very first handful of chargers are now already being physically built.
Now, this again, the dollars were allocated in 2022. And at this point, the end of 2023, there were none. At this point, 7 or 8 of these chargers that these dollars were allocated for, $7.5 billion. And if you couldn't tell, Pete Buttigieg did not have an answer for this. Well, you know, it's not as easy as just plunking down something. You know where these dollars are going? And this is, again, in defiance of everything that they claim electric vehicles are about. I'm going to get a traffic update and then share this with you. A report from Politico's Energy and Environment News. Do you know where these dollars are going? They are going to fossil fuel lobbies. These are going to, and it's benefiting traditional gas stations. The Pyramid Roofing Company talk at text line 447 KSGF. I'm Nick Reed. Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg struggled Sunday on CBS's Face the Nation to explain why the Biden administration only managed to build 7 or 8 electric vehicle charging stations thus far. The Inflation Reduction Act of 2022 allocated $7.5 billion for electric vehicle stations as part of building a national EV charging infrastructure. No EV charging stations had been built by the end of 2023, and apparently they say there's 7 or 8 at this point. Of course, it's the traditional fossil fuels that provide the power for these EV charging stations. So these are not zero emission. I noticed there was it was a commercial for one of the electric vehicle lines. And in small print, it referenced that it was zero emissions, zero road emissions. So in other words, it's an acknowledgement that pollution is put out in not just the development of and the manufacturing of electric vehicles, but charging them as well. It's just not coming out of the tailpipe. So it's an illusion. Politico's Energy and Environment News is reporting that the fossil fuel industry is the industry that is cashing in on this $7.5 billion for electric vehicle charging stations. They report that more than half, which by Pete Buttigieg's count would be 4, more than half of the charging stations being built so far from the 2021 bipartisan infrastructure law are rising at truck stops and gas stations, according to data exclusively provided by, or to rather, E&E News by EV Adoption, an EV data consultancy. In essence, the law's $7.5 billion pot for charging is reinforcing the very fossil fuel infrastructure that the EV era would seem to consign to oblivion. Service stations have an upper hand in this first wave of subsidies because they occupy the very real estate where the federal government wants to build a charging backbone at 50-mile intervals along the interstates and no more than a mile from highway exits. But that's not the only reason, Politico writes. Behind the scenes, service station industry lobbyists have been working to tilt the rules to their advantage. Breitbart notes that environmental groups are not criticizing the fossil fuel industry for lobbying for their share of the billions of dollars because they're just happy to see EV stations being built. Though none, of course, were, again, built by the end of 2023, and anywhere from 7 to 8. It's hard to keep count when you have that many, so you can understand why Pete Buttigieg is a little foggy as to whether 7 or 8 of them have actually been built. Now, from an infrastructure standpoint, this makes perfect sense. Gas stations are so much more than just a place that you get gas, obviously. I mean, you get all sorts of snacks. There are restrooms. I mean, it's a massive industry. And in fact, it's almost it's similar to movie theaters where they aren't making the money off the movies. They're making the money off the concessions. And gas stations are the same. They make very, 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 very little money off the price of a gallon of gas, nowhere near what the government makes. Their profits come from getting you to come inside and to purchase sodas, to purchase energy drinks, to purchase candy, to purchase alcohol, whatever else that they have to provide. Well, if you are wanting to attract electric vehicle users, you want to have these. It makes sense to have it where that infrastructure is already built, as opposed to just having it randomly out in the middle of nowhere. And when that occurs, of course, you have that fossil fuel industry that we're told is so horrible that we're supposed to be shifting away from, benefiting from those $7.5 billion. I don't know that there has been on this scale such a scam. And this isn't in opposition to electric vehicles. But when you look at why it is that we're told we are supposed to be forced into this transition, We're told to save the environment. It does not do that. Doesn't come anywhere close. We're told that we have to sever our reliance on foreign countries for energy and for travel purposes. This doesn't do that. This makes us even more reliant, specifically on China. Not to mention the slave labor that is used in order to mine the materials that are needed, oftentimes children slaves. They are not more affordable than, on average, gasoline-powered vehicles. And they are more inconvenient. And I'm sure in certain circumstances, scenarios, that for some people, listen, I'm a big believer in the free market system. And if these are as beneficial as we're told, then in a free market setting, they are going to survive. I happen to believe long-term they're going to go the way of 3D TVs. That they're going to be a novelty for some people who want to utilize them, but ultimately, any of the benefits that we're told come along with them don't exist for the average person. And they don't exist for the existential person who wants to save the planet and move us away from foreign reliance, which for a number of reasons is something that we should be concerned about. But this, again, doesn't do that. And so then we find, according to this report in Politico, Energy and Environment News, that $7.5 billion that is supposed to be part of transitioning us away from fossil fuels is actually helping the fossil fuel industry by plunking down these electric vehicle charging stations at gas stations and diesel stations. All 7 or 8 of them, or half of them of the 7 or 8, which would be 4. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Let's hit some of your Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line messages. Let's see. Emissions from electric vehicles, dust from the brake pads, solids from rubber tire, more polluting than modern gas-powered engines. It has to do with the massive weight of electric vehicles compared to modern gas-powered. Also, the wear and tear on roadways with electric vehicles causes 10 times the damage modern vehicles cause due to their weight, and they are massively heavier because of that battery. Those batteries are huge inside. Another noting that also gas stations benefit from having electric charging stations there because it takes so much more time to refuel, meaning more time for them to come inside. And that is an excellent point. There was a period of time when being able to pay at the pump was something that a lot of gas stations really struggled with because they wanted to get consumers to come inside and purchase the products that they actually make money off of, because they don't, they make barely anything at all off what you're putting in your car in terms of gas. And when it became very convenient to pay at the pump, that was something that, they really struggled with. How is it that we get, if we don't allow people to pay at the pump, then they may go to our competition, and so we lose them when it comes to what little we would get at the pump. So how is it that we get them to come inside? Trying to figure out different ways to do that, and of course advertising and so forth you see at the pumps. But if you are charging an electric vehicle, yes, you would be a consumer that is going to spend a disproportionate amount of time filling it up, and so it would increase the likelihood that you would go inside while you are having that charge. Another asking, don't you guys have an advertiser that installs EV charging stations locally? I don't know if we still do or not. I know there was a company that advertised a couple of different things. One was generators, and it was the same company that for a period of time was EV stations. Now, that is different than the $7.5 billion. There are private companies that install EV stations. And one of them did, and I don't know if they still do, advertise on the station. I haven't caught the ad in a period of time. And by the way, some people have said that it's hypocritical to run those ads when you have a position that government should not be forcing this. And listen, the free market is something that should be at play here. And if you have a private company that is able to convince different stores or gas stations to purchase an EV station, that's all fine and good. That's different than the $7.5 billion that the administration set aside in order to, unfortunately, compete against the free market system, as if those in the free market system, when it comes to electric vehicles, aren't having a difficult enough time. If you're talking about somebody that in the private sector is selling electric vehicle charging stations, and then $7.5 billion is allocated in order to essentially be your competition in some capacity, I mean, that's a real kick in the knees. Now, that particular advertiser that's mentioned there, I'm not sure if they have any sort of government contracting or if it is all private, but I've always contended, you make a vehicle out of anything under the sun you want to, but if the consumer does not want to purchase it, then the government should not be forcing Americans into a position that increases the likelihood that we would fix it, or would purchase it, rather. You know what that is? That is fascism. Economically speaking, fascism is when the government allows the private industry to exist, allows private ownership of companies, but then create laws that tell you how it is that you're going to run your business. And if you're a car manufacturer and the government comes in, or you sell cars, like out in California, for example, and the government comes along and says, you know what, you're not going to be able to sell that sort of vehicle to consumers after this date, that's fascism. And so once again, what we find here is from the political party that loves to point the finger at Donald Trump as being a fascist, they actively support and pass fascist legislation in the economic context. Incidentally, there is another report, Engineering and Technology, reporting that the copper needed for EVs is, quote, impossible for mining companies to produce, that there's not even enough of it in existence. News in 60 seconds. I'm Nick Reed. Springfield's Talk 1041, and good Tuesday morning, everyone. Coming up Friday, we have a free breakfast for veterans at Scramblers. Friday Roadshow sponsored by Custom Shade Window Tinting. And if you're a veteran, you're going to get free breakfast thanks to Scramblers, Serenity Honors, Delta Roofing, Air Services, Heating, Cooling, Plumbing, and Electrical. And it's as simple as just coming out and having breakfast with us. The Great Escape, we do have registration for that underway. Text coming in saying, I think it should be called the Great Escape 2.0 unless Trump wins, and we call it the Greater Escape. Can't wait. If Biden wins, we stay for 4 years and just call it the Escape. And maybe. Well, I'll just note this. The last Great Escape that we did the week after the presidential election was 2016. So maybe that's the lucky charm. Quite possibly. There's an interesting story that CNN posted, though I don't know that they actually covered it. And you may recall the desperation of the media and the Democrats trying to prove that Donald Trump is Hitler because of some reposting of a video montage that had a reference to the Third Reich. And so clearly Donald Trump accidentally let it out there, and he is actually Hitler, and he goofed. He goofed. CNN did something crazy. They investigated to find out what actually happened. Isn't that a crazy thing to do? CNN conducted an investigation into a video posted on former President Donald Trump's social media containing the words Unified Reich. And CNN found in their investigation that the Trump campaign's explanation that it was an oversight and not a fascist dog whistle was accurate. John Sarlin, a reporter for CNN, shared the findings on a post on X and revealed that the words appearing in a video that were posted on Trump's Truth Social account were an oversight, not a fascist dog whistle, and had been created to be used as a placeholder by Enes Simsik, a Turkish graphic designer. Sarlin's words come after Caroline Levitt, the national spokesperson for the Trump campaign, described the words appearing in the video as having been an oversight. Quote, this was not a campaign video. It was created by a random account online and reposted by a staffer who clearly did not see the word while the president was in court. Sarlin explained in his post on X that the network, this is CNN, quote, tracked down the source of the Unified Reich phrase in the now deleted Trump video and added that all signs point to its inclusion being an oversight. It comes from a 30-year-old Turkish graphic designer who in 2023 randomly copied and pasted it as a placeholder text for a vintage video template he put up for sale. President Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, of course, criticized Trump for the video, shared it on his Truth Social account featuring fake news headlines consisting of economy booms, Trump wins, among other headlines featured in the video. One was with the word Unified Reich. A Unified Reich, that's Hitler's language, not America's, Biden said. Oh. Quote, he cares about holding on to power. I care about you, which, of course, is why Trump is sitting in court as this controversy is going on. Simsik explained to CNN, quote, I didn't know it was my power to change politics. I don't know what could be crazier than that. Imagine if your work shakes a country. He explained to the outlet that the Trump campaign had seemingly created the video using graphics that he had designed in May of 2023, which provides people with the option to decide to use a template that looks similar to an old newspaper. CNN reported in the exclusive interview with CNN Simsek said that the Trump ad appears to have been created from video graphics he built in May of last year, designed to give customers the option of building something that looked like an old-fashioned newsreel. Simsek said he actually searched Google for the text about World War I, not World War II, and copied language he found and pasted it into the newspaper article. The article headline for those purposes read, German industrial strength and production had significantly increased after 1871, driven by the creation of a unified Reich. As first reported by the AP, the phrase appears to have been lifted from a Wikipedia entry on World War I. That was before the whole Hitler thing, for those of you who don't know the timeline. According to Wikipedia's logs, that phrase was created on November 15th, 2022, and has since been removed. The phrase does not reference Nazi Germany. But this is what the Biden campaign has reduced itself to. Name-calling. And, of course, Trump is Hitler. You got to give it to CNN. When they investigated it, I don't know what they intended to find, but when they found out it was a totally random thing that had absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with Trump, they actually posted it on Twitter, X. Now, this story about that story doesn't reference whether CNN actually went to air with it, but at least they did an investigation. So sorry, all you Trump haters. I guess today is not the day that Trump is revealed to be Hitler. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. Latest news update. The First Alert Forecast, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals, from Color 10 Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt. Partly cloudy, a high today near 80. 58 for an overnight low tonight. Tomorrow sunny, 79. And Thursday mostly sunny with a high near 78. It's been a week, I believe, since the vote took place, but the Springfield School Board voted 4-3 to reduce by half the amount of time each member is allowed to ask questions, to learn about what is going on. And as you can imagine, lockstep, this is what we knew was coming, the establishment that wants to keep everything the way that it is, wants to keep us on a path of failure in which the school is used as an indoctrination center as opposed to an education center, is that this last election, you got the majority, the 4 establishment candidates, voting to cut in half, let's be honest, the time that those who want to ask meaningful questions are allowed to do so. Starting with the June 11th meeting, members will have a total of 10 minutes per topic to comment or ask questions. They receive an initial 5 minutes, and then once every member has a chance to weigh in, they have the option of another 5 minutes. Members previously had a total of 20 minutes, but evidently when it comes to the future of education in the city of Springfield, that's twice the amount of time that's actually necessary. Too much. Too many questions being asked. The shorter time limit was sought by Board Vice President Judy Bruner, who also requested an electronic timer be displayed in the meeting room. Bruner said with 2 meetings most months, members have 2 chances to discuss an item prior to the vote. You know, if things were going swimmingly well, then potentially you could argue we don't need to spend as much time as we are on the future educational path of the Springfield public school system. But that's not really what's happening, is it? We aren't, I would argue, or Springfield School District isn't really in a position to complain that these meetings are taking too long. Now, given what I'm sure we will continue to see is the lockstep vote of the 4 establishment elites, they probably don't need time to ask questions. They know how it is that they're supposed to vote ahead of time. So it's just a waste of their time to pretend as if these are issues in which there needs to be some exploration, to pretend as if it is a time in which they are going to really truly gather more information so as to help formulate their decision-making process when you know ahead of time how it is that you're going to vote, and this is all just ceremonial. Yeah, you probably don't need 20 minutes. The annoying part is having 3 school board members that do actually believe that there should be this time for the purposes of better understanding what is going on in the district, whether it's the educational aspect of it or it's the disciplinary aspect of it. But for them to act as if everything is going just fine, we don't need all of this time, it just takes too long. You know, I'm not going to pretend as if it doesn't eat up a great deal of time to do that job successfully. And I'm not going to pretend that it is the sort of job that one can do casually and not recognize the fact that a majority of people don't want to do this sort of thing. But those are people who should not be running, and particularly not be in leadership roles. If freeing up 20 minutes, when you're, again, we're not talking about a meeting every freaking day. Judy Bruner acknowledging they're only like twice a month. And that members have 2 whole chances to discuss an item prior to the vote. And again, if things were going just fine and other districts throughout the state and the country were looking at Springfield and saying, man, what a success. How can we do what they're doing? No disciplinary issues. top of the chart when it comes to tests, when it comes to results. We are looked at as an example of how things could be done. Then maybe you could argue 20 minutes twice a month, that's just a little too much. We seem to be doing fine, but that isn't what is occurring. I mean, the example some of these people lead, they should be embarrassed. You think about the amount of time that some of these students spend studying and doing homework, certainly more oftentimes than 20 minutes in a day. And 20 minutes of Q&A is just too much twice a month. Maybe you should not be on the school board if that's too much time for you to invest when it comes to the education of children. Is this what some of these folks ran on? I don't remember these campaign ads. Hey, by the way, we're spending way too much time worrying about the school district here. We're going to cut some of that time in half. Bruner said materials are provided in advance of each meeting, and Superintendent Lathan is available to respond to questions by phone, email, or in person. Quote, our current procedure does allow for questions to be submitted in writing with a response that goes to everyone. I appreciate those questions, I do, and I appreciate the quick turnaround in terms of the answers. The change was supported by members Sharita Thomas Tate, Susan Provance, Danielle Kincaid, the board president. What, Susan Provance? I thought she was going to be an independent voice for these kids. I thought that United Springfield was supporting some independent individual that, I mean, she's just a couple months into this and she's already voting that the job essentially is too hard and takes too much time. I'm not going to pretend, again, that this is a fun job. Let me tell you what is happening here. You've got two types of people who run for something like this. You have those that are in it because they really, truly, genuinely want to craft policy and lead a district in a direction that is going to improve things for the kids in an educational setting. And then you have those that this is just resume stuff. These people hopscotch from, one elected board to another or get appointed over here to this. And it's essentially the adult version of having a letter jacket in high school, where the more little pins and medals and patches you have, the more admirable you are. And they're little trophies. And they like the idea of having this sort of responsibility. They just don't like actually having the responsibility. They like the attaboys that come along with it. They like the hobnobbing they get to do with it. They like the fact that it makes them feel important and that the important people in their minds, the movers and shakers, want to talk with them and give them what they think is the right direction for it makes them feel popular. But then when it comes to actually doing the work part of it, it's like Joe Biden. Much rather be napping. And the idea that somehow this is going to lead to a better outcome, I think we see in this vote 4-3. Those that are simply part of the system, the establishment, that just rubber stamp stuff, and so they probably don't need 10 minutes. They probably don't need 5 minutes. But it's just so shocking to see that the candidate that was just really promoted as this outside voice who understands the kids because she was a coach with the kids, and here she is lockstep in with the establishment individuals on this school board. It's just, who would have seen that coming? I guess that amount of time for the children in the Springfield Public Schools, they're just not quite worth that. 10 minutes maybe. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. I love the last line in this article in the News Leader regarding the decision by the establishment 4-3 of the school board to cut down the total of time that members will have to ask questions about whatever it is that they're discussing. From they've had 20 minutes, but things are going so swimmingly well in the school district, it was decided that only 10 is needed. And you've got Board President Kincaid saying, I just reject any suggestion that those of us who can succinctly make our point in 5 minutes somehow are not fighting for our students or the district, when a majority of us at the table are able to limit our conversations and our comments to a reasonable period of time. What an ass. I mean, talk about lacking class. So all of this time, this isn't in any way, shape, or form a reflection of, we know how things need to be done here. So we don't need to have all this discussion. It's just that she and the other three, they're just smart enough to be able to succinctly make their point and ask their questions in a shorter amount of time. Those three idiots that are constantly trying to figure out what is going on within the district, those three idiots that are constantly trying to improve things so that we don't continue in a school district to be an embarrassment, they're just not smart enough to figure out how it is to make their point in 5 minutes. What a piece of work she is. And an embarrassment. This school district is not. I feel sorry for anyone who's got their kids in the Springfield School District. And with this sort of leadership, why not make it 2 minutes? Why not make it 2? Or are you not that smart? You can't succinctly make your point or ask your questions in 2 minutes? I love how they come up with these random numbers. Instead of 20, we'll do 10, or we'll do this. And their time that is randomly chosen is perfectly reasonable. Just because that's the time that they pick. They decided we only need half the time. Why half? That's just what they pick. Anyone who needs more time than that clearly is some sort of idiot. Oh, what this district will look like in 10 years from now. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. Emily was absolutely wonderful. She took what to us was a terribly complicated process, made it so easy. She was so knowledgeable, efficient, caring, and kind that the real estate process was effortless. I would recommend her to anyone for all of their real estate needs. Also, another saying, Emily at House Theory Realty was able to guide us from house prep to close. Her knowledge helped us sell our house fast and for more money. The process went smoothly, and if you're needing to buy or sell your home, give her a call. That's Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. You can also find her at ksgf.com under Nick's endorsements. The First Alert forecast, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements from Color 10 Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt. Partly cloudy, a high near 80 today. For tonight, clouds 58, sunny 79 tomorrow, and Thursday mostly sunny with a high near 78. Here's a bit of news that you may not have known. Did you know that Ukrainian President Zelensky's 5-year term as president of Ukraine ended last Monday? Now, you may not have known this because, well, it actually didn't. It was supposed to. But something that we don't hear so much about is the fact that he just decided we're not going to have elections. In an interview with Reuters, Zelensky explained that his term is actually not over yet because he imposed martial law back in February of 2022, which prohibits presidential, parliamentary, and local elections from even taking place. Due to the resources that would have to be diverted from defense purposes to carry out an election, Zelensky said last year, now is not the time for elections. Well, that's kind of convenient, isn't it? More than 80% of Ukrainians say elections should be held only after the end of the war, according to an October survey by the Kiev International Institute of Sociology, an independent pollster. Zelensky would likely win an election, as he is by far the country's most popular politician, owning to his wartime leadership. Still, trust in the president fell to 76% in October from 91% in May, according to KIIS, amid signs of a military deadlock and the emergence of cracks in political unity. You'd think that with all that U.S. tax dollars that are going to Zelensky in the name of democracy, one of the requirements would be, democracy. Now, by the way, this isn't to say Putin is right and Zelensky's wrong. This is part of the problem that we have, and we are expected as Americans to accept this approach that over here is the bad guy, so that means nothing that he says is ever right. And over here is the pure as the driven snow good guy, and we have to accept everything that he does and portray it as in defense of democracy when he has imprisoned journalists and he's canceled elections. That doesn't necessarily have to change one's opinions as to whom it is that we side with, and even whether or not we fund them. But this portrayal by the administration that Zelensky is this, again, pure as the driven snow defender of democracy when he imprisons journalists, one of which died in prison, and he cancels elections, that just really doesn't jive with defender of democracy. There are lots of countries that have found themselves in the midst of wars, including the United States of America, and elections haven't been canceled in the name of saving democracy. If anything, even with the what we're told, it makes one, I'd say, question whether these polls are really genuinely accurate, because you'd think that this would be a no-brainer. It would shore up support. It would be a demonstration that what Zelensky is doing is extremely popular, and it would be a show of resolve, not just amongst Zelensky and his people, but amongst the people of Ukraine, if they really truly felt as if his popularity was that high. And it could very well genuinely be that high in a wartime situation. That's not necessarily uncommon, but why you would not, frankly, take advantage of that and have some form of voting, perhaps an altered form of it, because of the current situation at hand with the war and the dangers that are involved in the war, and it's not as if the entire country of Ukraine is occupied. We as a country, and in fact, one of the demands of this administration, though it was laughable, was that in order to lift sanctions on Venezuela, they would have to allow for the political opposition party to pick a candidate. And that's exactly what happened. But then he took the dictator of Venezuela took a page out of the Biden playbook and said, all right, well, I'll just have the court say that he can't run. And so then there's been a real big back and forth there. And the one condition is that you cannot just rig these elections. You have to have free and fair elections. Yet over in Ukraine, for some reason, democracy looks like imprisoning journalists and canceling elections. I mean, the requirement to be a good guy that you have to, without question, support Zelensky is not healthy. I mean, the fact this guy brought an actual Nazi to Canadian Parliament, an actual Nazi. Donald Trump is Hitler because some clip art referenced a unified Reich, which the left apparently thought had a connection to Hitler, even though it did not. So that stark difference in approach and this demand that we adhere to Zelensky is wonderful and good and don't question him. If you do, then you are somehow a puppet of Putin when Zelensky's the one who's canceling elections. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. Hey, everyone, it's Sarah Myers.
Hey, everyone, that's me. Roof inspections. They're pretty important. It's the best way to know the health of your roof and for you to go ahead and get ahead of those repairs before they actually become major issues. And sometimes it's pretty easy to tell if you have damage, missing shingles, yellowing on your ceiling, full-blown leaks, but sometimes those actual damage signs don't appear until it's actually too late. And that is why I want to recommend Josh and his team over at the Pyramid Roofing Company. Now, the Pyramid team, they provide free roof inspections, and whenever you give them a call, they're going to check everything from your vents to your decking and everything in between, and then they come up with a solution that works best for you and your home. Whether you need a simple roof repair or a whole new roof, the Pyramid Roofing Company, they're going to shoot you straight. And if you are in the military or a first responder, the Pyramid team offers discounts on new roofs, so remember, keep that in mind. If it is time for that free roof inspection, give the Pyramid Roofing Company a call today. You can find all that contact information under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at KSGF.com.
All right. Couple of notes of interest here at KSGF.com. We've got the CBCO Bleed Red Blood Drive that is going on this month and next. If you make a blood donation at any CBCO donor center or mobile blood drive, then you're going to get 2 tickets to a Springfield Cardinal game and a custom baseball shirt. You can also get information about that at cbco.org. And then Slightly Stupid and Dirty Heads is going to be performing Saturday, August 31st at the Thunder Ridge Nature Arena. Special guests, Hyrie and the Expendables. If you want a chance to win tickets for that, just go to ksgf.com to get yourself registered there. A text on the Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line regarding Zelensky canceling elections in Ukraine. Let's see. Zelensky cancels elections. The DNC cancels primary elections. Senile Joe tries to jail his political opponents. Seems like it all lines up with the DNC's version of democracy. And Joe also tries to have his opponents taken off of state ballots. Like I said, that the information regarding Zelensky canceling elections, in which his term expired last Monday, but he just canceled elections, so he's still president. And he has jailed journalists that print information that he feels is counterproductive to the goals of securing a sovereign Ukraine. Noting reality does not mean supporting the enemy. And this is the way that the left tries to force compliance. If you just observe some of these things that are going on, then they accuse you of using the talking points of Russia. And a complete, unquestioned obedience to any administration is never healthy for a free society. I want to share with you, Jonathan Turley is making some headlines because he believes that there is a chance that what Trump is going to be dealing with is a hung jury. And according to Politico, the White House is already planning on Joe Biden making some sort of address from somewhere in the White House after the verdict. And if Trump is found guilty, then the new talking point is going to be convicted felon Donald Trump. There will never be candidate Donald Trump or former President Donald Trump. It will be convicted felon Donald Trump. If, however, he gets a hung jury or he is found not guilty, the approach is going to be something altogether different. But make no mistake about it, we'll all understand what a horrible human being he is and how it's very patriotic for Democrats to try to throw Joe Biden's political opposition in prison. The following piece by Jonathan Turley is posted in The Hill, and he notes that abstract artist Jackson Pollock once said that his paintings have no objective meaning, so the best way for people to enjoy them is to stop looking for it. For many of us, Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg has created a new school of abstract law where there is no need for objective meaning. The jury is simply supposed to enjoy it for what it is, a chance to convict Donald Trump. Pollock was famous for his paintings drips on large canvases. Bragg has achieved the same effect by regenerating a dead misdemeanor on falsifying business records as 34 felony counts. To achieve that extraordinary goal, he has alleged that the document violations, which expired long ago under the statute of limitations, were committed to hide some other crime. Originally, Bragg vaguely referenced 4 crimes, and there have been months of confusion as to what he was specifically alleging as his criminal theories. Even legal analysts on CNN and MSNBC have continued to question the specific allegations against Trump as we head into closing arguments. As it stands, there are 3 crimes that have been referenced by prosecutors: state and federal election violations and taxation violations. Bragg's legal vision for non-objective indictments was greatly advanced by Judge Juan Merchan, who will allow the jury to reach different rulings on what crime is actually evident in Bragg's paint splatter. Merchant has ruled that the jurors can disagree on what actually occurred in terms of the second crime. This means that there could be 3 groups of 4 jurors with one believing that there was a conspiracy to conceal a state election, to conceal a state election violation, another believing that there was a federal election violation which Bragg cannot enforce, and a third believing that there was a tax violation, respectively. Nonetheless, Merchant will treat that as a unanimous verdict. In other words, they could look at the indictment, see vastly different shapes, but still send Trump to prison on their own interpretations. Moreover, Michael Cohen is the sole witness even to address the element of any of these crimes. Cohen is a convicted serial perjurer and disbarred attorney who appears to have lied again during the trial. Even if they consider his testimony, there's no direct corroboration in evidence on Trump's intent or knowledge. As a result, the prosecutors will rely on circumstantial evidence to support whichever interpretation the jurors will buy. Faced with charges that can mean different things to different jurors, Trump's team will have to focus on the spaces between the paint drips, the canvas itself. All of this case is based on the payment for a non-disclosure agreement that is perfectly legal and indeed common in business and politics. The Trump team needs to stop dancing around the NDA. The jury likely believes that Trump knew of the NDA and supported it. The defense has to emphasize the testimony of David Pecker, the former publisher of the National Enquirer, and that he killed stories of a variety of celebrities and politicians, including Rahm Emanuel and Arnold Schwarzenegger. He also said that he killed stories for Trump for years before he ever even thought of running for president. They need to emphasize the testimony of multiple witnesses that Trump seemed to want to avoid embarrassment to his family. He was also the host of a popular television show and an international businessman. The payment of a couple $100,000 to kill stories is considered a cost of doing business for most celebrities, particularly those who have television contracts with provisions allowing cancellations for scandals. In the instructions, the court will tell the jurors that payments cannot be campaign contributions if they would have been made anyway regardless of the campaign. They also need to point out other gaps. It was not Trump who listed payments as legal expenses or retainer payments. Witnesses said that payments to lawyers are routinely recorded as legal expenses. Indeed, it is not clear how the money should have been denominated, but the decision was being made by others in the Trump organization and by Cohen himself. Moreover, on the characterization of payment as part of a retainer, the other party to the characterization was former Trump Organization CFO Alan Weisselberg. He is currently in prison in New York, but was not called by the prosecution. The prosecutors elected to rely entirely on Michael Cohen, with various witnesses, including Cohen, referencing Weisselberg's decision on how to pay the money. That made the canvas itself largely Michael Cohen. And all of this is held together by a witness who admitted that he has lied to banks, lied to Congress, lied to prosecutors, lied to business associates, and virtually every creature that has ever walked or crawled on the face of the earth. He also lied in front of the jury about the critical call where he said that he told Trump about the NDA payment. The defense, however, showed that 96-second long call was to Trump's bodyguard, Keith Schiller, in late October of 2016. It was preceded and followed by text messages that indicated that their conversation was actually about a teenager harassing Cohen. Moreover, Cohen admitted to making millions by bashing Trump and that he has a personal interest in his conviction. You can throw paint on Cohen all day, but it will not cover up the fact that he is a pathological liar and grifter. That is why I still believe that a hung jury might even be the most likely possibility. That may change when we see Judge Merchant's final instructions. However, the only thing worse in New York than being a Trump supporter is being a chump. To rely solely on Cohen and not even call someone like Weisselberg is to play the jurors as chumps. Pollock was doing more than just throwing paint at a canvas. As Pablo Picasso said, there is no abstract art. You must always start with something. Afterward, you can remove all traces of reality. Bragg started with nothing and sold it as a legal abstraction. Now that, again, Jonathan Turley's argument that he thinks inevitably it will end in a hung jury. And I've heard this noted culturally, as I'm sure you have as well. And that is the terminology he used is that the only thing worse than being a New Yorker who supports Donald Trump is being a chump. And there is this belief that as much as they hate Donald Trump, that these jurors are finding, or it's believed that they are finding that they're being played here and that there is absolutely no case. And that fear of looking like some sort of idiot, looking like some sort of tool for the political class elites, is something that could override their hatred for Donald Trump. And I suppose we'll see. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. Registration is open for the second 2024 Great Escape. All the details at KSGF.com. Costa Mujeres, Mexico. Incredible resort. Did you see the rooms have liquor cabinets in them?
It's going to be dangerous.
It is going to be dangerous. That is a step above the mini bar to have actual liquor cabinets in the rooms. If you have not been on one of our trips in the past, I recommend that you inquire about this one. It is, as always, an incredible deal, and it will be the week after. I think we leave the Sunday after the election. I think it's Sunday as well. Yeah, it's Saturday or Sunday, but I think Cam said it was Sunday. After the election, and so it could be quite celebratory or not. I guess time will tell. We did this once before, and it was in 2016 after the Trump win, so maybe scheduling this to be right after the election is a good sign. You can get all of your questions answered by going to ksgf.com for the 2024 Great Escape 2.0. Glenn Beck's